PR Stoppers Talk Leadership, featuring Chris Foster, President of BCW Group North America. Here is our host, Doug Simon.
Chris, thanks for joining us. And you've spoken about how there's been changing expectations for CEOs during the epidemic when it comes to how they communicate. Can you share those insights?
Sure, Doug. And by the way, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I think there are a few things that have driven the change in expectations, and I think an opportunity for communications. Obviously, the pandemic in the early days, if you could remember back, the employers were a real source of information, information around not obviously the health side of the pandemic, but around work and the like, and that was quite important. Then as we moved into the corresponding financial challenges leading after that into a national dialogue, a global dialogue on race, inequality, there was an expectation that CEOs would communicate empathetically with staff. They'd communicate even when they didn't have answers. They'd give staff and customers a lens into their thinking as to sort of how they were thinking about preparing and managing their businesses through the virus, but also where they stood on certain societal issues. So communications has always been important, but I've seen an evolution, up the value chain where it really is becoming one of the more important tools in the toolbox for C-suite executives. And I think it's been great for all of us, but it's also put a lot of pressure on CEOs and C-suite executives to communicate in ways that we may not have had to, 2-3 years ago. But I think generally it's been a great thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that aligns with what we've seen from our TV producers survey, where the latest one, 92% of TV producers were open to interviewing brand executives for a story they're working on. That's the highest we've ever found it. Now, there's also an interesting side of that to going from there's more opportunity to communicate. It appears there's more need, but there's more expectations. So what do you do? How do you help maybe a reticent CEO or someone who's not necessarily comfortable in that format? Can they still be successful in this evolving environment?
Yeah, I'd say prepare. I was having a conversation earlier today, and regardless of whether or not we're comfortable or feel like we want to comment on certain issues, the expectation of brands, of leaders, of some of the most admired brands, is that we will have a point of view, even if we have, we don't want to take a hard stand. We are oftentimes being asked to explain why. So I would say that, yes, a change in expectation from internal communications to communicate persuasively and empathetically to staff, but also among customers to just sort of share and articulate where an organization or an individual stands on certain societal issues or environmental issues or domestic issues, even if it may not feel as close a link to the business. Having said that, we caution our clients to be authentic, incredibly authentic, and really think about the role that their organizations can play in societal issues so that we don't overstep. I'd say it's okay to announce your intent or talk about your aspirations, but be very clear on what you may want to do. And in some cases, in some of these issues that we're managing as a society, it's a journey. If you just take DE&I, for example, it's a journey. I don't think anyone can claim victory in that journey. I think we're all in a different place, given where we are as organizations, given our customer base, given experiences of the past. But to continue to be on the journey, be transparent about the journey, fail fast, and I've found it's even best when we share some of the learnings and the trepidation for CEOs as they're being asked to communicate. So the expectation's there. But I think it's also, we're being asked to communicate with more empathy and in some cases show a little more vulnerability, which is a little atypical for CEOs today.
Yeah, and as a segue, you spoke of the journey. You've spoken in the past about your internal journey as a person of color leading an agency. Would you like to get into that? Maybe that'll give viewers some perspective about the situation from someone who's been hyper successful in the industry.
Well, I'm grateful. I've had a lot of grateful to be in the position I'm in today, and there've been a lot of people who've helped me over the years, and who've sponsored me and mentored me, and from whom I've learned. But it is. I'm very proud of the position I'm in. I'm excited about the role that I'm able to play. But I think I have a responsibility to do a few things. One is to lead BCW North America in our journey, not just around managing the business and delivering successfully on our financial metrics and our people metrics, but also taking us on a journey relative to DE&I. I've said before, Doug, and you mentioned other interviews. I mean, it's I feel like I'm finally have a seat at the table where I can affect real change because I'm accountable to that change. And if anyone has ever worked with Donna Parada, you know, accountability matters. And so I've sort of pushed that accountability into the organization in a way that I think is respectful of where we are in the journey, but also holds our feet to the fire a bit. So I think that's been good. For me, you know, I lead all of the people in North America for BCW Group, not just certain segments, but I do want to use my voice, want to use whatever influence I have to lean in to diverse staff, to developing our staff and being very sensitive to the challenges around working in advisory services, to make sure we recruit the most diverse talent, and we're relentless about how we source talent and how we develop talent. And then how we advance our talent in the organization, making sure there's a high degree of transparency, but also we're making sure there's fairness and equity around that. And that is, you know, those are three core tenets to how we're looking at DE&I over an umbrella of accountability.
Yeah, and you're probably trying to bring some of those similar attitudes to the corporations, companies, nonprofits that you work with. Another trend, and this is also because of the pandemic, has been what you described as selling more upstream. People closer to the top are more engaged in what the communications plans need to be because there's more at stake. Is it different for an agency person with this new challenge of sort of the involved CEO, if we look at it that way, in the communications program? How does that differ? What are some strategies do you have to help navigate through that successfully for yourself and your team?
Yeah, look, first of all, I love it, right? I love the fact that we have more engaged CEOs in communication. We have more boards of directors who are engaged in communications, curious around that. I mean, you know, one of the things that's important that I see hands down is you have to understand, depending on the type of organization, whether it's private or public, their stakeholders are different. If I'm the CEO of a publicly traded company, my stakeholder base may be a little different than that of a nonprofit. So I need to have a much clearer understanding of the priority stakeholders and audiences, whether it's Wall Street or analysts or the like, as you know, because that's very, very important to some CEOs. So that in and of itself can be different.
Let me ask again. So tell me the importance of having a better sense of what's going on out there as part of your communication strategy.
So what I mean by that, Doug, is having a better sense of what's going on is understanding, having a keen understanding. When you start to provide communications consulting to CEOs and CFOs and boards of directors, you need to really understand the broader enterprise-wide strategy for an organization, not just what you're trying to do from a communication standpoint in a division. You really need to look at the enterprise and have that, because that's how CEOs are looking at their jobs, right? Not just through one division or one business unit or one stakeholder set. So really having that perspective about the enterprise-wide strategy, the competitive set, and the issues that matter most to an organization. I think that sort of expands our thinking. It's challenged us as communications professionals to expand our thinking a bit against a really important and vocal influencer segment.
Great. As you wrap up, PR historically has not had a great record when it comes to DE&I. There's clearly more awareness. Are you optimistic that things are moving in the right direction, at least? And does it need to move quicker? What are things that could help make it move quicker?
Yeah, you know, Doug, I sent a communication out to my team in North America last June. And I was a few days, probably later than I would have wanted to. And I explained in the communication that it took me a while to find my voice a bit, because I wanted to be incredibly hopeful that what we were seeing around energy and the safe conversations that we were having and the dialogue on race and inequality and social justice, I wanted to make sure it was going to be durable. And I wanted to wait to see if this was just going to be a moment in time or it was going to be a movement. But I gave myself permission to be incredibly hopeful and to be incredibly optimistic. And I haven't been let down yet. I think the industry is continuing on its journey. We're not where we want to be by any stretch. I think we have a lot of work to do. But I do continue to see a relentless focus on trying to get it right. We certainly, no one's perfect. No organization's perfect. No agency's perfect. But I think we're learning. I think we're continuing to take on difficult issues. I think the forums like this to bring race and equality into a regular course of conversation is important. So I applaud you for continuing to do that, and other
Thank you.
organizations, because we can't stop. And I think, if we continue on this journey and learn from one another, create safe spaces, fail fast, not be afraid to take risks. So I'm optimistic. I wish we would move faster, candidly,
Sure.
Myself included, but it is a journey, and I think we're moving for BCW as fast as we can, and I'm proud of what we've done.
Great. Well, congratulations to you on being a catalyst for change, being the change itself as well, and sharing such guidance and advice, as well as your hopeful, inspirational nature. We appreciate it.
Doug, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.